Hello everyone, this is part 32 of What If Naruto Was Trained by the Kyuubi, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. No sooner did the Sannin turn to mud did a loud wooden crash emanate from the tree line at the outskirts of the clearing, before a body flew in a beeline right towards Naruto. In response to the commotion, Naruto simply pulled two of his tails in front of him, and right before the body rammed into him was caught by the tails. One wrapping around the person's midsection, binding his arms to his sides, and the other around his TSK, trying to run away Orochimaru. And with so little chakra left too. Naruto questioned, pulling up his head so his sharp gaze was glaring at the snakes. How did you know? The Sannin questioned back, but Naruto noticed an inflection in his voice that denoted the tiniest hint of fear. How did I know what? That this was just a Tsuchibushin, Earth clone. That if I got the upper hand in the fight you'd try to shoo away. That you barely have any chakra left to even give a genin a decent fight. Naruto questioned. Simple really, you're a creature of habit. He answered, making his prisoner narrow his eyes. I've researched you well enough to realize a pattern in your battle strategies. Plus it helps when you have first-hand commentary on your thinking patterns and actions from a certain gorgeous and vengeful purple-haired student of yours. Other than the blatantly obvious similarities between you and a snake, you treat battle much like a snake would. You only attack when you have some kind of advantage over your opponent. Or you make one, such as taking an opponent's ally hostage or the like. And the moment that advantage is used up or goes wrong, you shoo away, leaving any of your own allies as fodder for your escape. He elaborated before smirking sadistically while squeezing Orochimaru tightly with his tails, getting gasping coughs from the Sannin. And while the majority of shinobi are guilty of this, you always take it one step farther than the rest. Always pushing the lines of morality and humanity. He pressed on, allowing the tail around his T to loosen slightly. But to answer the remaining two questions directly. I knew that was a Tsuchibushin because that is your modus operandi while fleeing a battle, and it's one of the few Bushin jutsu you've mastered. As for how I know you barely have any chakra left, it was the fact that the cage Bushins I set up as a perimeter for when you would try to escape, was able to easily deal with you. I only gave them enough chakra to give me an extra set of eyes, yet even with that little chakra the one you met up with was able to completely overpower you and send you back to the situation we are currently in. He finished. Orochimaru gritted his teeth at the Hanyu, to be upstaged and treated like a child by an upstart boy who is only as strong as he is because of the demon that resides in him. It was utterly maddening for the genius. His anger, however, soon gave way to laughter when he recalled Naruto's earlier statement. And what? You believe you're any better than me? The Sannin laughed as much as the tails would allow. Don't be so quick to judge me before you take a long look at yourself, Naruto-kun. Tell me, just how many people have you killed today alone? How many Okasons, Otusons, Oni-chans, Oni-chans, Koibitos have you killed this day? Were all those deaths really necessary? Or could you have defeated some of them without ending their lives instead? Don't try to ostracize my way of being a shinobi like you're any better. In a flash, Orochimaru was brought nose to nose with Naruto, who was growling ferally, the look in his eyes akin to hellfire. I may have killed people just like you or any other person who call themselves a shinobi. It's an unfortunate part of our profession that will never change no matter how much many of us wish it to. However, we are nothing alike, you and I. I don't experiment on people to push past what is not meant for human hands to grasp. For my selfish purposes and sole gratification. I don't tee people into a submission of false loyalty and use their fear as a deterrence from questioning me. I don't care people for their beliefs or their willingness to defy my ideals or insane dreams. But most of all, I don't care the innocent, especially not women or their children. He barked harshly, the last example Orochimaru noticed to be especially important to him, before he realized what it meant and smiled in sadistic satisfaction. Such a good little Jinchuriki pet you are. He cooed sarcastically, which caused Naruto to growl even more, and Orochimaru's smirk to widen, knowing he was right. You want to know why I ked her brats, don't you? He questioned. His answer was for Naruto's eyes to narrow to dangerous SS. Well, I see no reason to relinquish such information to you, especially when I would get nothing in return. He mused, that damned smirk making Naruto's rage nearly boil over. In exchange, I'll allow you a swift and painless death. He offered through gritted teeth, his words and reaction making the Sannin laugh once more. Is that really the best you can do? He joked. You should have been a comedian instead of a shinobi, Naruto-kun. He laughed more, before slowly calming down. However, I think I will reveal the reasons why I ked her brats. I think your reaction will be my reward. He smiled. A pregnant pause washed over the area, before Naruto got fed up and tightened his grip once more. Tell me, he roared. Immortality. The Sannin answered bluntly, with a gaze from Naruto that easily said, explain. It's quite a simple concept really. I was looking for immortality. Demons were naturally born with it. So after years of researching the Kyuubi through summoned snakes, I was able to create a timetable of when the Kyuubi did what, when and where. And after several years a seeming gift from Kami dropped into my lap, the Kyuubi gave birth. Using my information and awaiting the day that I figured the babies were grown up enough to harvest, several Junin whom I recruited for hating demons for whatever their reasons were, and I set out on the designated day the Kyuubi went out to replenish its food supply. The initial capture was the hardest part, many of the Junin SD before we were able to subdue them. Not that their lives were any concern of mine. But after a decade of waiting I was finally able to experiment on a demon. Unfortunately I learned only after the first one SD from my tinkering with its still pulsing organs, and soon after corpse, that the immortality of demons was simply a byproduct of a demon's blood and potent demonic chakra flowing within the same vessel. So with my answer finally in my grasp I was about to begin siphoning blood from the body, when I heard a yip, and turned to see the remaining two brats. I couldn't help but laugh to myself when I noticed that tears staining their fur. In truth I had forgotten about them. But with them in mind I set out to get the necessary blood samples from the volunteers. However, after I was finished harvesting what I could, the remaining Junin decided to have some fun, and who was I to say no? But as such all good times must come to an end, and the moment one of my snakes detected Kyuubi's return we left, taking as many of the Junin corpses as we could for insurance in case something came up later. The rest I'm sure their Okar-san has told you by now. He concluded, the smirk he had currently stretching from ear to ear. As Naruto heard the Sannin's explanation, nothing but absolute anger and hatred flowed off him in waves. His hands clenched and unclenched repeatedly with such force that small pools of blood had formed from the drops that fell from his palms. His breathing was harsh and ragged as if he had just run a marathon, but it was easy to tell that it was actually him holding back the volatile hatred that clenched his heart as word after word of Orochimaru's explanation entered his ears. By the time the Sannin finished, Naruto was at the breaking point of just forgetting his promise to Hana, Anko and Natsumi about keeping him alive, and just rendering him limb from bloody limb, literally. Why? You ked her children for immortality. You crushed her entire world. Destroyed the only things that still remained connecting her and her first mate together. All for your selfish experiments. You forced the Yondaime. My two sans to protect Konoha from her vengeance, a village you were still loyal to if only by the headband you wore for such a pitiful reason. You doomed almost the first 6 years of my existence. 4. He couldn't even finish his sentence, his mind wrapping itself around what he just heard, as the tails around Orochimaru unconsciously tightened, so much so that the Sannin actually began to choke and gasp for air. Despite Naruto's overload of emotions at that moment, his baser instincts didn't fail to notice the presence of someone whom he faintly recognized about to enter the clearing behind him. Naruto didn't move an inch from his position, until the very last second before he pivoted his body and shot his right arm right behind him and swiftly closed his hand hard around a soft FY object. Naruto, reining in his fluctuating emotions, if only barely, turned around to see whom he captured, and was rather surprised to see who it was, the current A-rank Nukenin of Konoha. Uchiha Sasuke. Here to save your master, traitor. Naruto's cold voice growled out, allowing his rained emotions to flare again, which caused Sasuke's eyes to widen at the feeling, and not knowing the situation. Of course, since Naruto had his hand G-spinged Sasuke's lower jaw in a vice-like grip that also covered his mouth, he effectively cut off Sasuke's muffled rebuke. Not that he would have wanted hear it anyway. A moment later a puff of smoke appeared on Naruto's right hip before a blue-hilted sword could be seen. Sasuke, seeing the summoned sword, went to grab his Kusanagi, but his eyes widened when he felt the tip of Naruto's sword at his teeth, and while he did see the movement with his Sharingan, it was only flashes of colors. I have no time for you, Uchiha, you should have stayed with the leaf. Naruto warned coldly, before he pulled the sword back a good foot away, before he thrust it forward. Matt, wait. A faint voice yelled out from across the clearing, a voice that only Naruto was able to hear thanks to his demonic heritage. He turned his attention towards the direction of the voice and was surprised to see who it was running across the clearing. A few seconds later the group stopped a few yards from Naruto and were quite intrigued at the scene they saw. Wait, Naruto. Tsunade huffed out, trying to slow her breathing from the non-stop running the group just did. Don't K him, she ordered, looking towards Sasuke, who had the very tip of Naruto's sword lodged in his TA, trail of blood sliding down his N. If I had been even a second later in calling out to him, Sasuke would be S. Tsunade thought worriedly. Why? What are you not telling us? Sasuke is an A-rank nuke nin from Konoha, who is now a Roto shinobi working for Orochimaru, so why should I not K him? I'd be doing you a favor. He questioned harshly, making the cage flinch slightly at his accusing tone. He isn't our enemy, she answered in a subdued tone. Akin to a whisper, but all of them clearly heard it, which caused Sasuke to now smirk, which only Naruto felt through his hand. What I'm about to tell you no one, and I mean no one but myself, Jiraiya and the Kazekage know. And I expect it to stay that way after this as well. At least until I'm able to announce it to the village, she stated, making her conditions of the truth clear to them, whom just nodding in understanding. Uchiha Sasuke never abandoned the Leaf Village, he was ordered to leave. Quote. She started getting quirked brows from all but Sasuke and Orochimaru, who had a worried expression now. It was an SS-ranked infiltration mission that I assigned to him. After discussing Sasuke's ambition extensively with him, I came to the conclusion that one day the brat would leave of his own volition to go to Orochimaru for power to K Itachi. So Jiraiya and myself decided to beat him to the punch, and with certain conditions set down by us, gave him this mission to infiltrate Oto under the guise of him running away from the village. He was to learn all he could under Orochimaru to further his own goals, and gain new jutsu for the village. As well as file a detailed report every month of any important actions Orochimaru took that may cause harm to Konoha or her allies. In exchange for his cooperation, and continued loyalty to Konoha, I allowed him to become stronger without the fear of Hunter Nin going after him like I would have done had he left on his own. His insertion in the bingo book was unavoidable to keep his mission secret from everyone, the council included. The Kazekage also informed his shinobi that should they find Sasuke, to not fight him and simply come back to Suna and report directly to him on the matter. And while at first I was worried about him foregoing on our bargain, he actually showed himself to be quite trustworthy. He sent the required report every month on the dot, as well as some bonus material for our interrogation and research and development departments. In actuality, he was one of the major factors, other than the Uzumaki clan and the Kazekage's abilities, that allowed us to keep the stalemate up as long we had. His reports were vital in being one step ahead of the Kiko Alliance's movements against us. She explained. We should have been informed of this. Hana growled out towards her ex-leader. Tsunade's eyes narrowed. If I hadn't even told this to Kushina, or my own people, why would I have told you? Shinobi that aren't even officially allied with us about it. Besides, from Jiraiya's report you 5 failed to mention certain agendas of your own with us too. She countered. Because like I stated before, our agendas run alongside yours for ending this war. The specifics of them didn't need to be discussed since they haven't affected the battle negatively. Natsumi retorted, glaring slightly at the buxom blonde. Meanwhile, keeping the truth about the Uchiha a secret from the other generals aside from Jiraiya and Gaara, but more importantly us, was foolish, for the exact reason you see before you. How many people in this alliance of yours do you honestly think could have beaten him? Only a handful if I were to guess, and they'd be too occupied with the grunts to go looking to fight him. All of us on the other hand could easily beat him like he is now. And even if he used his cursed seal level 2, the only person who'd have trouble would be Hana-chan, since she doesn't have some kind of chakra booster like we do. You were foolish in your deceitfulness with a Tsunade, and it almost cost you a powerful shinobi. She finished, her inflection one of a parent scolding a child. Tsunade stayed quiet after Natsumi's words, especially since they were true. She was rather foolish to not hint that Sasuke may not have been an enemy to them. But they weren't being very cooperative themselves before the battle began either, so trust was something neither party had given the other. Naruto watched the exchange occur, never relaxing his grip on either of the men. However, after Tsunade's explanation, he dropped Sasuke to the ground and resheathed Souten case. When Natsumi had spoken up, Naruto's heartbeat unconsciously quickened, and a solemn expression crossed his face, remembering Orochimaru's story about her children. It sped away at his heart as the mental images of his story crossed his mind as he watched the demoness speak. In truth, he wasn't sure if he had the fortune to tell her the truth, the long-term repercussions of which were unknown to him. And he feared how Natsumi would react, not in the anger she would rightly feel, but the sadness, depression, and guilt. He didn't want to cause her any form of pain whatsoever. But he balanced that with her finally knowing the truth about her children. He knew she was secretly haunted from her memories of that day. He never told her, but she often spoke in her sleep, and one of the more memorable times was when she dreamed of that day. He knew she was angry, he knew she was sad as well. What parent in their right mind wouldn't be after the of their kids? But what he never thought of, and what she never told him and was forced to learn through her sleep talking, was that she also felt unbelievably guilty. Guilty that she wasn't there to protect her children, to be there when they needed her the most. She felt their nose was on her hands, or paws, if only she had been a little bit faster getting back. If only she had smelled the intruders in their ancestral home. If only she brought them with her instead of leaving them in a cave. These were only some of the things she whimpered out while she slept and bawled her eyes out, with Naruto holding her protectively until she calmed down and fell back to a soundless sleep, never knowing he had heard a word of it. Once Natsumi finished her rant, she felt Naruto's gaze fixed upon her, and when she turned to him noticed his expression, which made her own copy his. "What's wrong, Naru-kun?" she telepathically called out, slightly startling him, since he was immersed in his own thoughts. Nothing, Natsu-chan, just surprised to see you guys here. He stuttered out slightly, trying his best to sound chipper. You were always a bad liar with me, you know that, Naru-kun, so tell me what's wrong. Did something happen while fighting Orochimaru? No, Natsu-chan, really it's nothing, just a little tired is all, he answered back, releasing an awkward chuckle. Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto. I am your mate, we are bonded together more deeply than any mortal is possibly able to be in their lifetime. Are you telling me with absolute certainty, and with the penalty of no S with either myself or Hana-chan until I deem your punishment over, that nothing is wrong? She requestioned both sternly and worriedly, making Naruto mentally flinch at the punishment should she find out. Knowing what was at stake, Naruto cleared his mind of all possible doubt before answering. Hi. I'm telling you that I am fine, Natsu-chan. He lied through his teeth. Naruto was left with a pregnant pause before he finally heard his mate's voice again. All right, Naru-kun. I believe you, she replied, her voice reassuring and warm, which only made him feel worse for lying, despite him thinking it was for the best. So what are we gonna do with dear ol' sensei? Anko asked, breaking the two out of their mental conversation. The group turned their attention to the still-bound Sannin, who was staring back at them, apparently highly amused at their conversation, obvious by the smirk he had on his lips. Take him back to base camp, of course. Tsunade answered, turning all attention to her. He has a lot to answer for back in Konoha, as well as a public execution to host. She finished, a small sadistic grin pulling at her lips. He isn't going anywhere. Naruto counted in a tone of finality, which caused everyone to look at him, and Tsunade to raise a brow. What do you mean? She questioned. She had a feeling she wasn't going to like where this was going. What I mean is, Orochimaru isn't leaving this clearing alive. He answered back, before turning towards the snake Sannin, and let the fur of his tail around the man's chest shift to show the F. Quote. Kyokujitsu no Fuan, seal of the rising sun. he growled before thrusting his open right palm against the pale chest. When Naruto took away his hand, Tsunade noticed a bloody handprint smeared on the F, before her eyes widened at seeing the blood begin to swirl around and slowly turn into a rather intricate-looking seal. What did you just do? Gomen, but it's a clan jutsu that my two-san left me in the scrolls within the mansion. As such I won't be elaborating what the seal does. However, I will tell you this. Orochimaru is now currently no more of a threat than a normal civilian, he answered back. Hearing this, her Hokage face returned. I want to know what you mean by that, Naruto. He is one of Konoha's most wanted criminals, and we have him in the palms of our hands. I don't want to lose him because you didn't explain your jutsu to me. You may still hate me, but as Hokage you know I can keep secrets when the need arises. With that in mind, I need to know what you've just done to him. She countered, getting tired of Naruto's cloak and dagger acts when it comes to things important to Konoha and its safety. Tsunade, last I checked, I'm a shinobi of Snow, not Konoha, so I don't need to tell you anything. Remember, had we not arrived, this war would have already been over. We are helping as a favor to Oji-san and our own ends. So do not think that because of that you have any authority over myself or my comrades when it comes to orders and the chain of command. He responded, before sighing. However, if it will stop your needless hounding, I will tell you this much about this seal. Orochimaru can no longer use chakra. As for the specifics of the seal, though, you're out of luck, and don't even try to have Jiraiya examine it either, since I know you'll at least tell him for the sake of Konoha's protection. My two-san was a true genius when it came to fuinjutsus, as you know, and thanks to his notes I was able to create this fuinjutsu that is even more complex than the one he placed on me. This is out of Jiraiya's league. Tsunade's eyes widened at what she just heard. A seal that can stop chakra. It didn't even sound possible. She also couldn't help but blush in anger and embarrassment at both his choice of wording when it came to her questioning, and the fact that he knew, even though she said she would keep it a secret, that she really wouldn't, since she was a cage of a hidden village that wasn't allied with Snow. Vital information like that about a potential enemy's jutsu isn't something you keep to yourself, even if that enemy is someone you know. I see, she said lowly. However, that still doesn't explain what you plan to do with him. She finished, her statement making Naruto look at her with a raised brow. Really? He couldn't help but chuckle. I thought it was pretty obvious. Hana-chan, Natsu-chan, Anko-chan, and myself are going to K him. He stated calmly, as if he was discussing the weather. What? You can't K him. He needs to be tried for all the crimes H has committed. She shot back, which caused Naruto to narrow a glare at her that made her audibly gulp. For a moment she swore she wasn't looking at Naruto anymore but a demonic beast. He has been tried by us. He responded, fanning his hand across the three he mentioned before. And we find him guilty. He snarled the last part. That made Tsunade slightly jump at the tone. Tsunade stared into Naruto's stead amethyst orbs, and realized that he wasn't going to back down from his statement. Clearing her head of these thoughts, she reverted back to being the leader of the village hidden in the leaves, and got into a fighting stance. Gomen, but I can't let you do that. He has to be tried for his crimes in a socially sanctioned place. Shinobi aren't equipped to be judge, jury, and executioner with every Newtonin they come across. It's why we have bingo books in the first place, to apprehend criminals and bring them to justice, or at least the justice that their home village deems them worthy to receive. Now it was Naruto's turn to narrow his eyes. Tsunade. You really don't seem to understand the situation right now. I'm not making a suggestion. I'm not bargaining. I'm not negotiating. I'm telling you that Orochimaru will not leave here alive. This has nothing to do with social justice, this is vengeance. Our vengeance pure and simple. Vengeance against the man that has caused us so much pain, suffering, loss, and anguish for so many years of our lives. I'm not asking you to understand, because I doubt you ever could to the levels of suffering we have endured. And Orochimaru is the catalyst to the major problems in our lives, and now that we finally have him, we aren't going to let him go, not for you, not for Konoha, not for anyone. He is ours. He said, but when Tsunade was about to open her mouth to protest, he cut her off. Tell me, Tsunade, if the people whom killed Nawaki and Dan were standing before you now at your mercy, but then someone asked you to give them up, would you, could you? He questioned, her expression turning to one of shock at the sheer unconscious emotional response the question caused her. I see. She relented after a minute of silence, her face now looking at the ground. Quote. I know I can't stop you 5 if this is what you really want. She finished, before turning around so her back was to them. And I don't think I want to, because I know I wouldn't give them up either. She thought solemnly, before walking away from the small group back towards base camp, with Sasuke in tow ready to rejoin his true comrades. He too understanding the group's wishes, after all he also had someone he wished to kill for ruining his life. The group watched the two leave, until they disappeared through the tree line, before turning back towards Naruto and the still-bound Sannin. Anko-chan. Naruto spoke up making the snake mistress slightly jump at being called out. Until then she had been in deep thought about certain methods she wished to use on her old sensei. Quote. I believe you deserve the first session. He offered, and couldn't help but mentally chuckle when he saw the woman's face light up like it was Christmas Day, while nodding her head vigorously. Anko stepped forward, and when Naruto released his hold on the Sannin, grabbed him by the collar of the shirt, before Snake's shirt out of her sleeves and wrapped around him constricting his movement once again. Or, is Anko-chan really going to try to discipline her sensei? Orochimaru cooed mockingly with a smirk, before Anko showed her own. You're damn right. I've learned so many things I would just love to show you sensei. She cooed back, but her tone was one you could tell was deathly serious. I find it laughable for you to even try. He taunted, trying to use psychological warfare to make the woman lose her edge like when they fought in the Forest of Death. But she would have none of that, obvious by when she slammed her knee into his groin, making him cough several times before throwing up slightly. You won't find it laughable soon, I assure you, sensei. She hissed harshly, before walking away from the group, dragging the Sannin across the ground since he couldn't stand up any longer. Anko-chan, you have 5 minutes with him. We can't have anyone from Konoha finding us in the middle of it, and try to rescue him because soon it had a change of heart. Naruto called out, before a thought hit him. And make sure he is still alive when your time is up. He ordered, only getting a half-assed wave from the curvy snake mistress as she continued walking away. It had been several minutes since Anko had left, as the group simply stood in the clearing silently, awaiting their friend's return. Unfortunately for Naruto, his mind couldn't help but drift back to what Orochimaru told him about Natsume's children. And his emotions showed over the memory quite clearly through his eyes. To make matters worse, every so often Naruto to take a quick stare at said demoness, whom seemed to be almost feeling his upsetitude but seemed to ignore it, for now at least. Finally the 5 minutes was up, obvious by Anko's return. Said woman had the biggest grin on her face as the others saw her walking back. But what made them look at her curiously was the fact that she was also crying at the same time. Even more strange was what she did immediately after entering the group's proximity. She strode right up to Naruto and engulfed him in a tight hug, her face set up against his chest. Naruto, not knowing what was going on, just did what came naturally and hugged her back, while the girls looked on awaiting an answer to the purple-haired Junan's actions. After another minute of the hug, Anko released him but kept her forehead pressed against his chest, with her face looking at the ground. Arigato, she finally whispered, though all of them heard it, and now mentally questioned what she was thanking him for. Arigato, for everything. She paused to wipe her eyes of the drying tears. For all the kindness you've shown me. For being my friend and treating me like me and not the snake bee. For giving me a home that actually wants me for once. But most of all, for finally giving me the opportunity to return all the pain Orochimaru had caused me, when I know that Konoha would have never given me that same chance. She finished, causing everyone around her to smile softly at the woman's heartfelt confession. Naruto, after hearing this, just wrapped his arms around her shoulders and hugged her softly against him, allowing Anko to let go of all the pent-up emotions that resided within her thanks to Orochimaru. Hana-chan, you're up. Naruto called out, over Anko's head. Remember, only 5 minutes. He emphasized, getting a nod and a fang-laced smile from his second mate before she walked off where Anko had gone. A minute after Hana had been gone, Anko had finally recovered her bearings, and with an appreciative smile and a chaste kiss on the cheek walked out of his grip to stand next to Yugito while enjoying the torturous screams of her sensei. That reminds me, Anko-chan. Yugito called out to her friend. Why didn't we hear anything from him while you were gone? Don't tell me you were merciful just because he was your old sensei. She joked with a smirk. Hardly, she scoffed, before showing a smirk of her own. But it's rather difficult to scream when you have a Western taipan shoved down your tea. She explained, letting their imaginations roam with that simple sentence, which made Yugito shiver unconsciously. Remind me to never piss you off, she retorted, only making Anko's smirk grow even larger in response. During their back and forth, Naruto reverted back to how he was before, getting increasingly anxious as time went by. Natsumi, having quite enough of his attitude, decided to get to the bottom of this. She was not only annoyed with Naruto's uncharacteristic behavior but was also worried and wanted to know what was wrong with him. She walked directly in front of him and gave him a stern stare before speaking. Alright Naru-kun, I said I believed you before, but your attitude and mannerisms are telling me different. Now tell me what is eating at you, or will I have to find out for myself? She growled at him, leaving her unspoken threat for him to understand, and was shocked when he frowned sadly, engulfed her in a hug much like he did to Anko, only in a more loving embrace, and nuzzled his face against her in both love and apology, though she didn't know that. Please don't, please, he pleaded in her ear, now making her more worried than annoyed because of his fearful tone. Seeing her mate like this, caused Natsumi to ignore his pleas, and before she knew it she was shuffling through his memories. More specifically the memories after he left Anko and herself to fight. Yugito and Anko, after seeing the small confrontation, just continued to watch in both worry and curiosity because of the pair's reactions. However, they weren't prepared for what occurred only a minute after Naruto initiated his hug. The most malicious ki they ever felt in their lives washed over the clearing, and despite their strength the two could barely stay up on their knees while wheezing to breathe. They looked up to see with their widened eyes, Natsumi's tails thrashing about wildly as if they had minds of their own. While Natsumi's body was almost convulsing in wanton freedom in Naruto's hardened GS. Not only that, but when they looked even more closely at the demoness, more specifically her face, their expressions grew even more bothered, and scared. While her eyes weren't as blank as Naruto's was when he was under the influence of his bloodlust, they could see all the hatred, anger, and spite dancing off her ruby orbs, as she cried, but they weren't tears of salt, but tears of blood. Her mouth was tensed in an expression of maddening rage, with her fangs and jaw clenched so tightly that her gums had actually begun to bleed, which overflowed her lips under the pressure. Then, just as suddenly as the enraged demoness's ki engorged the area, it left, allowing the two women to breathe normally again and stagger back to their feet. The first thing they now noticed was the sort of mantra that Naruto was whispering in her ear, obviously used to calm her down. It's not your fault, he said, making them wonder just what it was she saw in his memory. It's not your fault, he repeated, before they saw her knees buckle and give out with him catching her in his firm grasp, and he led them both to the ground with her lying on his lap while he rocked her back and forth. It's not your fault, he continued, as they now saw Natsumi's expression run from uncontrollable rage to one of ultimate sorrow as she now openly cried in his embrace. The two mates stayed like this for the rest of the time until Hana returned. Said woman's expression both of worry and confusion written on her face, for not only the ki she had felt, but from the situation she walked back in on. What happened? She whispered to the remaining women, not sure whether or not it would be a good idea to interrupt the two demons. I don't know, she felt something was off with Naru-kun, then a minute later she released that ki, before it ended up being like this. Yugito answered, now getting an even more worried look from the Inuzuka. Naruto-kun, Anko called out softly, foregoing her friendly nickname considering the situation. The Hanyu turned to face the three worried women, and simply shook his head at them. She just found out a truth that dealt with her and Orochimaru, which she had been searching for over 15 years. Gomen, but that's all I can tell you, it's her story to tell. I'm sure you understand, he explained, quickly getting sympathetic nods back. A silence reigned over the clearing as Naruto just continued to comfort Natsumi after the revelation she came across from his memories. Hana, knowing that she'd rather let the two get back to normal on their own, but also knew that time was of the essence when it came to their situation, and decided to break the silence. Eni, Natsumi-chan, it's your turn, you can finally get your revenge for whatever that bastard did to you. She whispered warmly to the now hiccuping demoness. In truth, they all would have liked to use this as blackmail against the Queen of the Demons, but they knew that this situation was completely off limits to joke about. Ga. 2. Natsumi thanked between her hiccups, as she slowly stood to her feet with some help from her mate. She quickly wiped the remaining bloody tears from her face, not caring of the smears left there. She then brought Naruto into a kiss. That no-s punishment still stands because you lied, mister, but I do forgive you. I know you only did it to protect me. She spoke against his lips, with a soft and thankful smile. Gomenasai, he whispered, even though he knew she had forgiven him. She gave him another chaste kiss before stepping back, and as if the past 5 minutes never happened, turned towards where Orochimaru still laid, and her demeanor completely reversed as she narrowed an enraged glare, while her fingers tensed and clenched rapidly. As if realizing what she was doing, she released a long breath, calming her body and emotions down, before she turned her face over her shoulder to look at the other woman and spoke. He killed my kids, and now I know why. She stated bluntly, before disappearing in a column of red flames towards Orochimaru. Her words caused the women to go completely wide-eyed and their mouths to gape in shock, now realizing why she reacted the way she did, and in all honesty admired her for her impulses to not break away from Naruto and kill Orochimaru immediately. Only moments later were Orochimaru's horrendous screams heard again, which never relented for the entire 5-minute length that Natsumi had him for. The 5 minutes seemed to be up too soon, or at least that would be Natsumi's future take on it. The group decided to meet Natsumi there instead of wait for her to return to them, and what they witnessed when they got to the spot would have made any lesser shinobi throw up. Orochimaru was sprawled upon the earth in a heap, his own blood pooled around his disfigured body as Natsumi simply watched on with an expressionless face. His appendages were twisted in the most inhuman ways, as his broken bones could be seen jutting out of his in a grotesque manner. There were cuts all over his scantily clothed body, the lacerations still allowing some blood to seep out of them, leaving trails of the crimson liquid to run down his body and add to the ever-growing pool. He had burn splotches all over his body, as if someone left a Kaiten jutsu cast upon him for far too long, obvious by the black and charred skin compared to his naturally pale complexion. Upon his bare chest, they saw 3 names carved into his F. Unfortunately, they were written in a language none of them could understand, even Naruto, but they could give a good guess at who the names belonged to. It was a true testament to Natsumi's almost unparalleled healing abilities that the Sannin was even still conscious from all the pain he had endured in the last 15 minutes, obvious by the continued groaning he let out, let alone alive from the sheer amount of blood he'd lost. If not for just who it was they were looking at, the group might have actually felt some kind of pity for the poor and pain-stricken man. Unfortunately for Orochimaru, he got no such sympathy from them. After they recovered from their initial shock at his appearance, the group strode up to Natsumi, who continued to watch him. And despite the ungodly pain he was suffering through, Orochimaru still had the sense to notice their arrival, before chuckling lowly with spurts of blood shooting out of his mouth every so often. So you've all finally come back. If you think you'll get me to talk, you're sorely mistaken. He stated, as more dribbles of blood ran down the sides of his mouth. No one spoke a word back to him for a long minute as he continued to groan. Finally, however, Naruto strode forward from his spot and walked up to the side of the Sannin before grasping his and lifted him up effortlessly, bringing him to eye level. As I said to Tsunade, we don't care about this war. He growled back. You and a select few others were why we came here today. He explained, only to get the Sannin to chuckle and spurt more blood out as his body hung limply in the air. I see. Well then, if you really don't care about them, you won't be bothered by the fact that even if the Kiko Alliance will continue their war, and will wipe Konoha, Suna, Whirlpool, and your precious family off the face of the elemental nations. And now with your intrusion, Yuki won't be far off the chopping block, he said with a smug smirk, before it turned into a pain grimace from feeling his end squeezed almost until he couldn't breathe. We'll see about that, Orochimaru. However, I wouldn't put too much faith in Kumo, Kiri, Iwa, or Oto's fortune to fight without you present. He responded, loosening his grip on the Sannin, who coughed out more blood and breathed in air. Anyway, I believe it's time to end this little session of ours. You know, as I think about it, you and I could actually be considered 2 sides of the same coin, in certain circumstances anyway. He stated, with a slight look of thoughtfulness in his expression. Oh, do tell Naruto-kun, he Sannin urged, while now smiling himself, simple curiosity running through his veins after Naruto's strange comment. It's more so irony than anything else really. You see, you've lived every single day of your adult life manipulating, sabotaging, and betraying all those around you for the simple purpose of finding a way to live forever. Myself, on the other hand, for every single day of the first half of my life I've simply survived, lived for myself, and tried to make any sort of lasting connection I could with those around me. All the while almost daily I attempted to find a way to end my insufferable life. Now we come back to right here and now, because the very being you've spent most of your life striving to become is standing before you now. An immortal being, who never chose to be, will be the one to end your life. He said with a dark laugh. However, because of this connection I loathe to admit we have, I will be generous and give you a present before us. If only for the reason that because without your past selfish actions I don't think I would have met many if not all of these lovely ladies behind me. He finished, smirking lightly. Orochimaru couldn't help but laugh at Naruto's little speech. Despite the fact that it really was true, he was currently staring into the eyes of the very being he had betrayed, sabotaged, manipulated, and hunted to become for nearly 30 years of his life. Karma truly had a sick sense of humor. Oh, and what such present could you possibly give me in the state I'm in? He asked in pseudo-wonderment, after recovering from his laughing fit. Ah, that's the best part. It should satisfy the curious scientist in you, and your obsession with strong jutsu including Kekkei Genkai that I know you love to collect so much. He explained, making the Sannin quirk a brow in question, which only made Naruto's smirk grow. To put it bluntly, I'm going to allow you to experience my Kekkei Genkai and its corresponding jutsu, the Hiraishin. Upon hearing this, a subconscious glint of excitement passed within the Sannin's yellow orbs before the full weight of Naruto's words and what the repercussions of such an act would have shot through his mind. No sooner had it appeared, did the excited glint leave being replaced with a questioning curiosity, and the tiniest bit of fear. While that certain is an interesting present, Naruto-kun, I can't help but not understand how such an act would be a present for me considering the literal act of such would cause my death. That is very true. Only those of the Namikaze clan can survive the pressure the jutsu puts on the body. Which is entirely my point. He stated simply, letting the Sannin realize for himself Naruto's intentions as his smirk grew more and more sadistic looking with each word. Now we should get started. He paused coldly and with his free hand went back into his weapons pouch, grabbed 2 Hiraishin kunai. With deliberately slow movements he dropped one into the ground where he stood, and launched the other into the trunk of a tree at the edge of the forest. Ready? He questioned. A crazed glint now entered the Sannin's eyes knowing that he was about to Hi, show me Naruto-kun, show me what made your fool of a two-san better than me to become Yondaime Hokage. He hissed, finally showing the first signs of anger. Naruto growled at the snake's words, and looked back towards the women. He looked at each one which had a past with the snake, and awaited their judgment. Hana nodded quickly her acceptance. Anko took slightly longer, taking a short look at the man who had at one time been a father figure, a hero, a lover, and teacher before nodding. Natsumi took the longest and just gazed into the yellow stead pools of the legendary Sannin, with several emotions flashing through her own, before her body jumped when she felt a soft and furry thing caress her cheek tenderly. She focused her eyes and saw the soft and furry thing actually being one of Naruto's tails, before she looked back to her mate and saw the sadness and worry in his expression. She smiled gently and nuzzled into the tail slightly before closing her eyes, letting a single tear fall in memory of her med children, before she slightly nodded her head. Getting the final votes, Naruto turned back to the almost impatient-looking Sannin, and gripped his en tighter, lest he lose his grip during the jutsu. Hiraishin no Jutsu, Flying Thunder God Technique. The Hanyu called out lowly before the women saw him disappear in not only a flash of orange but also an explosion of red, and just as suddenly reappear back where he was standing, only leaving traces of an orange blur in his wake. The girls looked on and finally realized what the red explosion was. It was Orochimaru himself, or what was left of him due to his fate after experiencing Naruto's blood limit. Orochimaru's body looked to be only a husk of what it once was. His skin clung to his bones, making him easily visible to the eye. It almost looked as if he was starved for weeks, his ribcage, jaw, pelvis all visible. However, looking more broadly at both him and the surrounding area, it was obvious as to why. All of the remaining liquids within his body before the jutsu was now either canvassed around the clearing, or was dribbling out of every single orifice he had, including his eyes, ears, nose, mouth, as well as two others the women didn't want to think about. The liquids flowed like rivers while deeping to earth, engorging the already large pool even more. It seemed that Naruto's past assumptions were correct. Those not of the Namikaze clan, who use the Hiraishin no Jutsu, are put under such pressure from the speed of the Jutsu that their boss, but more specifically their insides, are literally crushed, only leaving the skin and bones to look as if the person was just literally juiced, like an orange, though looking more like a raisin. Naruto himself looked upon the now Sannin with disgust, albeit satisfaction, especially when he saw the look of pain and fear etched onto his face in the last moments of life. He found it an ironic and fitting end for the snake Sannin, and finally felt his vengeful thirst sated, and justice to be done. He dropped Orochimaru's husk to the ground, where it landed unceremoniously with a loud splotch, thanks to the bloody pool it landed in. And so ends the terror that was Orochimaru, Naruto said almost poetically, before turning towards the satisfied-looking women. Quote, Natsu-chan, would you mind? He called out, leaving the unasked request to be understood by the demoness, who didn't fail to please when she smiled at him, and strode past. Sure, Naru-kun, she answered simply, before handsealing. Quote, Kaiten, Gukakyu no Jutsu, fire style, great fireball technique. She called out before, a fireball the same enormous size as when she first used it after getting her body back, engulfed Orochimaru's body, quickly incinerating it. Natsumi released the jutsu soon after the fire began to spread out of control upon the grass, before Naruto used a Suten jutsu to douse the fire out. So what now? Yugito questioned, now that their main reason for coming just went up in smoke. We return to base camp and see how the war is going, and help out if need be. I'd like to be back in Yuki soon. Naruto answered, getting agreeable nods of all those present. How do you think they'll react when they find out about his death? Hana questioned. They'll probably celebrate, that is until they learn that we were the ones to kill him, their reaction then is beyond me. Natsumi answered. Either way, let's head back, I'd like to get a drink and see how the squirt is doing. Anko sighed out, getting curious looks from Natsumi and Naruto, making her look sheepish, and grinned stupidly. I kinda spared that girl from before, she explained, though getting stern looks from Natsumi and Naruto, making her sigh. Look, I'll explain on the way. But she isn't exactly the bad guy, girl. She concluded, and although getting even more curious stares from her friends, was relieved that they nodded in understanding. One last thing, however, Naruto stated, getting their attention. Quote, I believe there is something over there you'd find of interest, Anko. After all, I believe it could be considered your inheritance. He ended, before pointing towards large chunks of the white snake F. What exactly is it? The snake mistress questioned with a curious brow. The Kusanagi, he answered, making Anko's eyes go wide. Wha? How? She questioned. He wasn't very proficient with a sword, let's just say. He chuckled. Now are you going to grab it or leave it here for some unknown Konoha shinobi to claim it? He questioned, before laughing, never before seeing Anko run so fast. Let's go, she'll catch up shortly. He ordered to the remaining women. They looked back one last time to witness the charred remains of the man that caused all but Yugito so many troubles in their lives, before turning back towards the direction of the base camp and shunshined in their own unique styles. Naruto and Natsumi in purple and red flames respectively, Yugito in a cloud with streaks of lightning, Hana in a swirl of brown leaves, and Anko in a swirl of purple leaves when she noticed the group had already left with Kusanagi strapped to her hip. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.